Welcome to NOOJILLA'S English World.
My dear students, welcome you all to a presentation on the poem Digging, written by Seamus Heaney. Digging is a poem written by Seamus Heaney. In this presentation, we will see some details about the author and some important details about the poem and stanza-wise meaning, analysis, literary devices used in the poem, summary of the poem, and some important references. About the author. Seamus Justin Heaney was an Irish poet, playwright, and translator. He was born on 13th April 1939 in Northern Ireland. He died on 30th August 2013. His main occupation was as a poet, playwright, translator. His notable works include Death of a Naturalist, North, Fieldwork, The Spirit Level, Beowulf, A New Verse Translation, District and Circle, Human Chain. Notable awards received by him include Geoffrey Faber Memorial Prize, E.M. Foster Award, Nobel Prize in Literature, 1995, T.S. Eliot Prize, the Griffin Trust for Excellence in Poetry, Lifetime Recognition Award in the year 2012. About the author. Heaney was recognized as one of the principal contributors to poetry during his lifetime. American poet Robert Lowell described him as the most important Irish poet since W.B. Yeats. Many others, including the academic John Sutherland, have said that he was the greatest poet of our age. Robert Pinksy has stated that with his wonderful gift of eye and ear, Heaney has the gift of the storyteller. Let's now read the poem first. Digging. Between my finger and my thumb, the square pen rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground. My father digging. I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The coarse boot nizzled down the leg, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep, to scatter new potatoes that were picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade just like his old man. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on Turner's Bar. Once I carried him milk in a bottle corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving swords over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf digging. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the cuts of an edge through living roots awaken in my head. But I have no spade to follow men like them. Between my finger and my thumb, the square pen rests, I will dig with it. Digging poem, stanza-wise analysis. General introduction about the poem. Digging is an 8-stanza, 31-line poem. The poem starts off in the present, moves into the past, and then returns to the present and hints at the future towards the end. The poem does not have a set rhyme scheme as such and alternates between tetrameter and pentameter rhythms, with several short lines here and there. Essentially, it is a free verse poem with strong internal rhymes, alliteration, and assonance. The reader is taken into the mind of the speaker, who is watching out the window as his father digs the garden. What is notable is the fact that the speaker holds a pen. From the first line, the pen holds the power of the present and on into the future, while the spade used by the father is distanced, a tool of the past. Gradually, the emphasis shifts from the here and now back into the past, a sensuous feel for the land with all its smells and sounds dominating the middle of the poem. The speaker is reflecting on the rural history of his family, the men who worked in the land. He concludes that they were born and bred for such toil, while he is made for something less manual. He will use the pen in much the same way that his forebears used the spade. Stanza 1. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests snug as a gun. Squat, short, thick. Snug means cozy or comfortable. This stanza means the speaker starts the poem saying that there is a short, thick pen resting between his finger and his thumb. He compares the pen to a gun which is in comfortable position. That means the pen is very powerful tool. Analysis of the first stanza. A non-rhyming couplet. The opening lines set the scene, giving a close-up for the reader of the speaker's finger and a thumb holding a pen with which he is writing. This pen is powerful and full of life-changing potential. The reference to a gun suggests that it can fire bullets, symbolic ones, of course. That means pen also can be very powerful tool or a weapon with the words it writes. Note the slant rhyme of thumb, gun, which loosely binds the lines, while enjambment sends the reader straight from the end of the first line onto the second. Stanza 2. Under my window, a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground, my father digging. I look down. Meanings of difficult words. Rasping means rough or harsh. Spade is a tool which is used to dig. It's a shovel. And gravelly means rough or harsh again. This second stanza's meaning is like this. In the second stanza, the speaker says that he hears a clean, rough, harsh sound under the window of his room that is outside the room. He further says that the sound is emanating from the act of digging the rough, harsh ground with a spade. The worker who is digging is none other than his father. The speaker looked down the window to watch his father digging. Analysis of second stanza. The second stanza contains 3 lines, with the third and fourth line fully rhymed, which points to a strong bond, sound, ground. Stretching away from the tetrameter of the opening 2 lines, these are pentameter, allowing for more content. The speaker can hear someone digging into soil. It's his father. It must be a familiar sound to the speaker. He knows it's his father even before he looks down. Again, enjambment, which means continuation of a sentence without a pause, helps the flow of meaning between lines and also between stanzas. Stanza 3. Till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. Rump means the hind part of the body. That means this particular part, this is what called rump. Stooping means again bending. The person is bending to dig the land. Potato drills evenly spaced rows of potatoes in a field. Meaning, in the third stanza, the speaker gives further information about the activity under his window. The speaker's father is straining there digging the land. His back is bending down and coming up. While bending down and digging, the father's picture is visible in the present times. But when he comes up, the speaker's vision sees his father in the past days. That is, the speaker's memories went back to the past days when his father used to dig in the potato drills. Stanza 3 analysis. This stanza contains 4 lines and there is no rhyme. The stanza refers to the hard work of the speaker's father, both in the present and in the past. Interesting changes there in the tense as the speaker, watching his father bend as he goes through the potato drills, goes back in time 20 years, perhaps to when he was a child. Interesting observation is, when the father bent down, he is in the present times. When he comes up, he is seen in the past times 20 years away. Stanza 4. The coarse boot nestled on the leg, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. Nestle means settle or lie comfortably within or against something. Plug means the lower part of the shoe. Shaft means a long or narrow part or section forming the handle of a tool. Lever means lift or move with a lever. Scatter, it means disperse or spreading something. So these lines mean the rough boots of the speaker's father firmly and comfortably stand on the support of the lug, that is lower part of the boot. The speaker's father balanced firmly the shaft, that is the long handle of the spade, against his knee and rooted out the tops of the potatoes. By burying the bright and sharp edge of the spade in the ground, the father is unearthing the potatoes and scattering them. Others who were there, including the poet, were collecting the unearthed potatoes. The fresh potatoes were hard and cool. The poet could feel the hardness of the potatoes. The analysis of this particular stanza. The fourth stanza contains 5 lines. The stanza is the close of culmination of all his father's spade work. Stanza 4. The speaker was there observing the hard work, the detail, as his father went about digging up the new potatoes. Verbs like nestled, rooted, and buried give us the picture of rural landscape, while boot, knee, and hands bring a strong physical dimension. The stanza tells how strenuously and firmly the poet's father worked in the field while rooting out the tall tops and digging out the potatoes. With the sharp edge of his spade, the father scatters the potatoes, which were collected by others, including the poet, who was a child then. The whole stanza presents the past instant before our eyes by describing the whole stanza presents the past instant before our eyes by describing the physical movement, reaction of the senses like touch. Stanza 5. By God, the old man could handle a spade just like his old man. This means the poet says that the old man, that is his father, was handling the spade just like his father, that is poet's grandfather. Analysis. The fifth stanza contains only 2 lines. This stanza tells about the continuity of the skill of handling a spade or the act of digging from generation to generation. The poet's father was digging similar to the poet's grandfather. Now, this stanza introduces us the poet's grandfather. Stanza 6. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on Turner's Bog. Once I carried him milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving sods over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf, digging. Turf means grass and the surface layer of earth held together by its roots. Bog means an area of wet, muddy ground. Turner's Bog here refers to an area where the poet's family worked in his childhood. Sloppily means loosely, carelessly, or untidily. Nicking means to cut into or through. Slicing, cutting something into pieces. Heaving, lifting something heavy with his great effort. Sod means grass or land. Meaning of stand. The poet is saying that his grandfather cut more grass or turf in a day than any other man of their area, Turner's Bog, where the poet's family owned their farm. The poet says that as a child, once he carried milk in a bottle for his grandfather. The bottle was covered with a piece of paper. The poet's grandfather drank the milk and again immediately fell back to his work of cutting the grass and throwing it over his shoulder. The poet's grandfather drank the milk and again immediately fell back to his work of cutting the grass and throwing it over his shoulder. The poet's grandfather used to go on digging the land further and further to find good turf. The sixth stanza contains more lines than any other stanza in the poem. The poet provides more information about his grandfather in this stanza. Thus, he takes readers deeper into his ancestral history. This time it's not the potato being dug, but peat, known locally as turf, which was dried and used for fuel in wintertime. The opening 2 lines are the poet's tribute to an idealized iconic figure within the family, the local hero, the grandfather, champion turf cutter. Turner's Bog is the name given to a piece of peat bog not far from Heaney's birthplace, the village of Bellaghy in County Derry. Analysis of stanza 6. This stanza brings the reader intimately into a detailed scene where grandfather is out on the bog with his spade. The speaker or the poet goes to his grandfather with milk in a bottle. The memory of the poet is very clear as he is describing the past incident in a picture-like manner. Heaney's use of endowment in this stanza is particularly apt to produce relevant flow and parse. Note the repeat of the title word, which focuses upon the act of digging. Stanza 7. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the cuts of an edge through living roots awaken in my head, but I have no spade to follow men like them. Mold means loose soil rich in organic matter. Squelch means a soft sucking sound made when pressure is applied to liquid or mud. Particularly during the rainy season, you can experience this particular sound. That means when you thump your foot into, particularly during rainy season, you can experience this sound. When you thump your foot into the pool of mud, you listen to this sound. Squelch, a soft sucking sound made when pressure is applied to liquid or mud. Particularly during rainy season, you can experience this sound. When you thump your foot in the pool of mud, you hear the particular sound, squelch. Slap, a blow with the palm of the hand or a flat object. Soggy, which means wet and soft. Peat, a brown deposit resembling soil formed by the partial decomposition of vegetable matter. Curt, rudely brief. Stanza 7. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the cuts of an edge, through living roots awaken in my head, but I have no spade to follow men like them. The meaning of this particular stanza. The potato mold, the land where potatoes are grown, is cold and has a distinct smell. The wet and soft land is making sounds when the feet and hands of the workers enter into it and cut the edges with the spades. The memory of the cutting and other works in the potato peats recurred to the poet. The poet says that he has no spade like his father and grandfather to follow their footsteps and work in the field. Analysis of stanza 7. The typical vocabulary pertaining to rural and agricultural world, like cold smell, potato mold, squelch, slap, soggy peat, cuts, edge, living roots, spade, etc., takes the readers into the fields and gives a feel of personal experience. The last line in the stanza says that the speaker or the poet is not in the occupation of agriculture like his father and grandfather. He explains it with the expression, but I have no spade to follow men like them. We are not sure whether the poet or the speaker is regretting or not for not having a spade and for not being able to follow his ancestors. The memory of that scene is alive in the speaker's mind. It takes him back to a different time and immediately releases him from the past. It's a kind of paradox. By remembering these strong male family characters and their reliance on the spade for a living, he now is able to wake up. The family roots are cut metaphorically and in his memory physically. He no longer needs the spade because he is not made of the same stuff as the men of old. It can be regret of not following his ancestors, or it can be the enlightenment that he has better tool than a spade with him. Stanza 8. Between my finger and my thumb, the square pen rests. I will dig with it. This means this final stanza tells about the resolution of the poet or the speaker. The poet says that he has no spade with him to dig like his father and grandfather, but he has the thick, sharp pen between his finger and his thumb. The poet says that he will dig with his pen now. Analysis. This final stanza gives the logical culmination of all the memories and dilemmas that come to the mind of the poet or the speaker. In the previous stanza, that is 7th stanza, the poet says that he has no spade to dig the field like his father and grandfather. Now, the poet announces that he too will follow his father and grandfather in digging, but with a different tool. His father and grandfather dug with a spade, but the poet would like to dig with his pen. Now, he will dig with his pen. Digging with pen means contributing for the betterment of the society with his writings. Writing literature is also considered as one type of cultivation. Now let's look at the literary devices used in the poem. Rhyme. There is no set rhyme scheme for digging, no established pattern of end rhymes. The only full rhymes occur in lines 3 and 4, sound, ground, but these are not a part of a scheme. Internal rhyme is there. Look, stooping, boot, rooted, cool, and again with between, clean, knee, deep, neatly heaving, and thumb, under, rum, up, like, cut, tough. There are internal rhymes. Use of these long and short vowels brings the poem a depth of contrast in various stanzas. Meter. In poetry, meter is the basic rhythmic structure of a verse or lines in verse. There is no set regular meter in this poem, although tetrameter, that is 4 beats per line, and pentameter, 5 beats per line, dominate. Especially, there are more pentameter lines. This steady core parallels the action of the digger, steady and without extremes. Shorter lines tend to slow things down. So note that stanzas 2, 3, 5, and 8 end with the short lines to reflect the slowing down of the spade work being observed. Metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that is used to make a comparison between two things that aren't like but do have something in common. The pen is the spade. The speaker declaring that he will use the pen to dig with, leaving behind the tool of his forefathers, the farmer's spade. That means here, the writer is describing or comparing his pen as the spade which was used earlier by his father and grandfather. Alliteration. Alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. There are several examples of alliteration which enhance the sound and brings variety and interest for the reader. Spade sings, gravelly ground, tall tops, buried the bright, squelch and slap, cut, cuts. You can observe the sounds here. Spade sings, the S sound is repeated. Gravelly ground, the ga sound is repeated. Tall tops, the ta sound is repeated. Like that, the sounds are repeated, which is called alliteration. Repetition. Repeating certain words and phrases in a poem gives the reader a clear message of importance and emphasis. It can also be an echo of the action taking place, in this case, that of digging, which is most definitely repetitive. So look out for the words digging, spade, down, men, turf, and the first line and a half. Between my finger and my thumb, the square pen rests. And the next literary device used is Animotoria. Words that sound like what they mean are called Animotoria. For example, squelch, slap, soggy. That means hearing the sounds, you can imagine what action is going on. Now, let's look at the summary of the poem. Digging is a poem written by Seamus Heaney. He is an Irish poet, playwright, and translator. The poem starts off in the present, moves into the past, and then returns to the present and hints at the future towards the end. While holding a pen between his finger and his thumb, the poet reflects upon the rural history of his family. The poem starts with the poet's description of his father working under the window with his spade. His father was digging the garden. The notable fact is that the speaker holds a pen like a gun, which is a symbol of the power of the present, while the spade used by his father is a thing of the past. Looking at his father digging, the poet goes back to the memories of 20 years past. In the past, his father used to dig in the potato drills. The poet also used to involve in collecting the potatoes that were dug by his father. He still remembers their coolness and hardness. The poet says that his father was able to handle the spade just like his father, that is, poet's grandfather. Now, the memory of the poet further shifts to his childhood days when he saw his grandfather digging a turf. His grandfather was the best cutter of turf in that area. The poet also informs how he took a bottle of milk for his grandfather and how he drank the milk and immediately went back to his work. The poet presents the rural setting by describing the visions and sounds of the field while his grandfather was working. Thus, he remembers all the past days of work in the field, both by his father and grandfather. The poet says that now he has no spade to follow in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. The family roots are cut metaphorically, but the poet says that he too can dig with his pen. Thus, the poem presents both the nostalgic feeling of the poet as well as the differences between the occupations from one generation to the other generation, where the past generations used a spade to dig the field to do cultivation. The present generation uses the mighty pen to enlighten the society with writings. So here I have presented some references for your further reading and better understanding. You can also visit my blog EnglishNotesSummary.blogspot.com to get summaries of different literature lessons.